What is going on? What is going on? The offseason is officially upon us, and the 2023 NBA Finals have officially come to a close as a franchise, after 47 years of playing NBA basketball out in the Rocky Mountains, has finally come to reach the Mount Olympus of the sport to capture their first ever NBA championship. Welcome inside to Open Run, presented by War Media. My name is Gabriel Wilkins, and I'm joined as always by my man, Josh Hicks, to talk on all that was this week across the hardwood in the basketball world. How are you feeling as we are currently recording this in the middle of June, several days away from the official start of the summer?
Heck of a season. This is definitely was a season for the books. A lot of things that took place all year, all season long, all year long. But you know, either way, it was a good day. It was a good season for the NBA, not just in the regular season and the historical moments that took place there, but of course the playoffs. This is one of the more hyped playoffs in a very long time, and the NBA Finals, fit where the NBA would have loved to go from a parity perspective. And if you're a real basketball fan, you gotta be happy about that. So I'm in good spirits right now.
Oh, same. And you definitely can't complain about the season that was in the NBA. Had a lot of magnificent milestones reached, from LeBron James surpassing the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on the NBA's all-time scoring leaderboard to Joel Embiid, becoming the first big man since Bob McAdoo to average 30 points in back-to-back seasons on the way to MVP. And last but not least, Nikola Jokic doing what he did, setting landmark feats, all the while delivering the Denver Nuggets their first ever NBA championship. Man, that's quite grand, I must admit. And to see two of the last three NBA champions be small market franchise led by international players that led them to the promised land, that's quite remarkable. Because if you put me if you was to put me in 2003 at my current age now back then, and you told me that the Denver Nuggets and the Milwaukee Bucks would someday win a championship, I would have laughed at you. But now you looking like the smartest man in the building if you had that thought. Even though the NBA has been filled with parity in my eyes over the last 30 years, in the sense that you've seen teams make deep runs into the playoffs, with the exception of maybe the Charlotte Hornets and the New Orleans Pelicans. To see a pair of franchises finally get over the hump, one get over the hump for the first time in half a century, another one get over the hump for the first time in nearly a half a century themselves recently with the Nuggets, you take it. But in this week's edition of Open Run, me and Josh will take the opportunity to recap and share our thoughts on the series that was between the Miami Heat and Denver Nuggets in this year's NBA Finals, including where we stand directly on a 7-time All-Star guard's recent remarks about the potential state of his future, who has scored nearly 20,000 points in his storied career out in the Pacific Northwest, and much more. However, before we get into that, let's take out some time to show some appreciation to some of the stars who stepped up in this year's NBA Finals, as well as those who have in various roles of this year's past, or of years past, as part of our hoop shout out segment, as we always do each week to tip off Open Run. Special hoop shout outs go out to Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray of the Denver Nuggets, who became the first pair of teammates ever in league history to each average 25 plus points, 5 plus rebounds, and 5 plus assists in a single postseason. Jokic also became the first player in league history to lead the league in total points, rebounds, and assists within a single postseason as well, in the midst of his stellar 2023 playoff run. In addition to the Miami Heat's all-time leading rebounder, the longest tenured player in franchise history, and Mr. Miami himself, Udonis Haslem, who after 20 seasons in the league and capturing 3 titles with the franchise, is hanging it up for good after playing in 879 regular season games and 149 postseason outings for the Heat, after earning a roster spot with the organization just 2 decades ago after starring out overseas in France. as an undrafted free agent out of the University of Florida. So now that the 22-23 NBA season has officially come to a close, Josh, what recent news or storylines to come across the basketball spectrum has stood out to you the most over the last week and some change, since we previously had the pleasure of talking on all things pertaining to the game?
We're going to talk a lot, obviously, about the NBA side of things throughout the rest of this show. So I'm gonna not touch the NBA this go around. I'm touching WNBA. Sue Bird, Sylvia Fowles, jersey retirements, and I want to say back-to-back weekends or back-to-back weeks. It's impressive to see the women's version of the point guard retire the jersey. And Sylvia Fowles, who, started her career here in Chicago with the Chicago Sky and, was dominant here, helped them get to the finals, WNBA finals with Deladon. And then next thing you know, she goes to Minnesota and goes crazy and wins championships over there. Heck of a career for both of them. And they both changed the game in their own way. Sylvia Fowles was one of the was such a beast in the post in the presence. She was one of the original baby version. She was Baby Shaq for a reason. They literally, the dominance that she put in the game, especially on the rebounding side, and changing women dynamics by being able to dunk, effectively and, do it in major stages. She brought a lot to this game that never goes unquestioned. And Sue Bird, what can we say about Sue Bird? The multiple champions, she's always been a winner, coming from UConn, winning multiple championships at UConn and bringing that over to WNBA and winning, I believe, 4 championships. But her impressiveness is the way that she did it. She did it in multiple eras, which shows how impressive she was able to do it while being a starting point guard in each of those eras. 4 championships over 20 years spread out. That's a heck of a accomplishment and a true blessing and testament to her skill set, her leadership, and her loyalty to the Seattle Storm and helping them become the franchise, especially during that time of her stay, of her tenure, that is a team to want to play for, a team to want to look out for, and a team that you can never count out in any moment or any situation on the basketball court. So shout out to those two. Heck of careers, well-deserving. And, obviously we look forward to more legends in the game, taking things to the next level, because we know the WNBA from a legends perspective and the Stars perspective, they're in a very good spot moving forward in the future. But shout out to those two Trailblazers for making the game what it is today.
Oh, for sure. You're talking about a pair of players who between them combined for 21 All-Star appearances and 6 WNBA championships and left their mark on the game in every sense of the word. Olympic gold medalists, left marks not only at the professional level, but at the collegiate level at their respective alma maters. You take a lady like Sylvia Fowles, who came shortly after Simone Augustus, keeping LSU afloat.
Yep.
Sue Bird, starring beside the likes of a Diana Taurasi, a Swin Cash, under Gina Auriemma, winning multiple national championships in Storrs, Connecticut, as a member of the UConn Huskies. They deserved it. And I believe they got their numbers retired on the same day to close this past weekend on Sunday. And that was very special. And Sylvia Fowles is someone that we know well, as you alluded to, due to her history with the Sky, who she actually helped lead to their first WNBA finals prior to them eventually getting over the hump a couple of years ago with Candace Parker and company. But one thing that caught my eye over the last 24 to 48 hours in the wake of the Denver Nuggets winning their first ever NBA championship was just the recent debates around Nikola Jokic. I don't want to take anything away from this guy. I think what he's managed to do over the last 3 years, winning back-to-back MVPs, being a multi-time recipient of all NBA first team honors, and guiding the Nuggets franchise to the top is great. I think you can make an argument now that he's among the top 10 or 15 centers to ever play the game. However, what I'm having an issue with is a lot of recency bias. A lot of people saying, well, he's a top 5 center in the game. And I get it. I understand that that's what keeps people engaged in the game. Everybody don't love the game like we love it. Some people follow it on a casual basis. Some people live it. But it's hard for me to put Nikola Jokic, as we're currently talking about him and his career to date at this time, over a prime Shaquille O'Neal. Even over a prime Moses Malone, a guy that I never had the pleasure of seeing play in live time. However, seeing some of the archival footage of him, I respect this game. Mm-hmm. What he was able to do at both levels, not just in the NBA, but in the ABA. And to be able to go from a Houston Rockets team who he led to the finals in the early 80s to the Philadelphia 76ers and win a championship beside the great Dr. J, better known to many as Julius Erving. Like, what are we doing? Hakeem Olajuwon. It's so many great centers that have played this game. And I don't think we need to sit here and act as though these figures don't exist. No disrespect to Nikola Jokic. He shut me up and he proved a lot of people wrong, but I always did believe in Nikola Jokic. I must admit that. I had conversations with many people several years ago about Nikola Jokic, and I remember having conversations then as he was coming off of the bench in Denver, trying to find his footing in the league and battling with Yusuf Nurkic for a starting spot in the Nuggets lineup. Mm-hmm. I remember having conversations with people as to whether or not he is the most underrated player in the game. I don't think we can have those conversations anymore. I think everybody in America knows who he is now. If they don't, they better ask somebody. But let's just pump the brakes a little bit. And let's just take some time to do our research on the history of this game and not allow it to get lost. I understand we in a new wave environment, 2023. Social media is more rampant and powerful than it's ever been before. But we can't disrespect some of these legends of the game and act as though they was playing like in the Stone Age or something. Because there have been many great centers that laid the blueprint for Nikola Jokic. And oftentimes I think we forget about that, including some international ones such as Arvydas Sabonis, who we as American fans of the game didn't get a chance to see until later on in his career, when he was sort of a shell of himself, even though he showed you flashes of what he once was in his prime from time to time.
No, that's very valid points, man. I'm not going to get too much into it because, we have that listed for later on in the show.
For sure.
But I agree with you. It's always like this every year. As this person who won the championship elevated himself to this type of status in the league. And, it's always that type of conversation. And for sure, this is one for Nikola Jokic, but not just for Jokic, but for Jamal Murray. If you talk about the point guard position, how he hasn't gotten the credit he's deserved throughout his career. And people question whether or not he's the guy that's going to help you get over the hump, but he showed that he is. And, even guys like Aaron Gordon, too. No one thought Aaron Gordon was going to win a championship. He was a top 10 pick in the league. And, people like me, including me, questioned whether he had what it takes to really be that guy that you can trust on to take you to the promised land. But he found the perfect role at the right time with the right team. Everything's about timing and situations. And, they exploited that. So to me, there was a lot of those type of conversations, like you mentioned, when you talk about the greats, yeah, for sure, when it comes to Jokic, but it created a lot of other narratives for others on that team as well, in ways that, we never thought it would be. We're talking about DeAndre Jordan winning a championship, first out of the big three within Lob City. Like, think about that. No one thought DeAndre Jordan was going to win a championship faster than Chris Paul. Like, no one thought that.
Yeah.
And no one thought that. But yet here we are, right? So it's a lot of different conversations around this finals team specifically that you can go into and be like, wow, you really never thought that could happen. But here we are, right? And that's the same with Jokic, and we're not, like I said, we're not gonna go in deep into it because that's later on in the show, but let's just say that you make a very valid point that people do need to keep in mind. I may not be the best historian, but Gabe is definitely the more historian out of the both of us. So he knows that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's the truth, man. And he gets it. He's gonna bring the facts and the stats to you. So that's what But what you're saying is spot on, man. And a problem that we have discussed even early in previous shows within the league. Talking about how the league is very quick now to push this Eurocentric narrative of top star players in the league, and rightfully so. 2 out of the last 3 championships were led by European players, foreign players. You can't dismiss that. And there is some truth to that, but it gets out of hand when the league is pushing a product that's so global now. You got to keep it up. You got to keep the narrative going. You got to keep it going. And that's, I'm not saying taking anything away from Jokic, but it also feels like, okay, another one of ours won. Let's push it a little bit more. Let's push it a little bit more.
Oh, yeah. It definitely feels like that. And I don't fault the league.
Right.
I don't fault Nikola Jokic for it. I love Nikola Jokic as an athlete. But I think sometimes a lot of us as fans of the game and purveyors of the sport, if we're not careful, we could get lost in that. Yep. And we can allow what's sold to us to control our thought process in the way we view the game itself without having a mind of our own when we watch the game. That's where I have a problem. But I want to also give a shout out to a guy whose name you didn't mention on this Nuggets roster, Jeff Green.
Yes.
A guy that's went to hell and back throughout his career, man.
Yes.
The last supersonic to win an NBA championship.
Right.
And not only the last supersonic player to win an NBA championship, but a guy who has played for 12 teams in the league, I believe, over the last 15 plus years of his career, finally getting over the hump after having heart surgery about 10 to 11 years ago and having doctors tell him, you will be fortunate enough to play another 5 years. Being that veteran presence for those guys. I truly enjoy having a pleasure of watching him play on a final stage for the second time in his career, because people forget he was a member of that 2018 Cavs squad.
Yeah.
Got swept by the Warriors and overcame the Boston Celtics in 7 games to get to the NBA Finals. I appreciated his mentorship and leadership to guys such as Aaron Gordon, letting them know how to play certain situations defensively. You need guys like that. And Udonis Haslem, as I mentioned before, those guys are kind of like the last of a dying breed in the league. And I gotta give kudos to Jeff Green, man, for finally getting over the hump. People can say whatever they want about him, but it's a reason why he's still in the league earning his checks. And I think you saw proof as to why that is through hearing him wired up at the NBA Finals, as well as through some of the big plays that he had in key situations when his number was called upon by Mike Malone.
Oh, most definitely, man. I love the Jeff Green story. I really do, man. And it's very special and unique, and a testament to what it means to not just have hard work, but to put the perseverance along with the dedication to keep going in those moments. Obviously, since we're going down this Nuggets roster, I got to get at least 2 more shout outs. The first shout out is Ish Smith. Ish Smith, been in the league 14 years, another journeyman. Played for almost every team in his league. Played for like 13, 14 teams in his league. And he happens to be on the one that this year, even though he's played more than 1 year with, more than one stint with this team, he finally gets his ring. And that's a just testament to like the Jeff Greens as well. There's a lot of stories on this team that, are privy to. We always talk about Miami and them being the underdogs, and they're playing undrafted players that are rising to the occasion to get them to this point. Denver has a lot of those underrated stories too. And they shined in this NBA Finals. But I got to give a shout out to LA. I got to give a shout out to LA, man, because both the Lakers and the Clippers got rid of key players that are now champions on this Denver team. The Clippers got rid of Reggie Jackson, said, you can go, bye-bye. And Reggie said, I'm going to go home. All right, Denver, I'll come home. And guess what? The man's a champion. The Lakers could have used Thomas Bryant in the playoffs, if you ask me, with the lack of big man depth that they had, but they weren't going to play him. So they shipped him to Denver, and the man's a champion. So you got to give, sometimes the positions you think were the most ideal are just a one-stop shop to take you to your real destination. And that's what happened to those two guys. And it's just so funny because it's LA. Like, y'all could have used both of them in y'all playoff rosters, and y'all chose to let them go. And now they're in a position where I know they're probably sitting like, even though they're not like top tier players, you can look at them and be like, dang, we could have used them in the playoffs. We could have used Thomas Bryant to help battle, Nikola Jokic in the paint.
Definitely.
We could have used Reggie Jackson from a point guard perspective, especially when our main guys went down, with Kawhi going down with the Clippers in that first round. Russ needed some help in that backcourt. Reggie could have helped him out. It's just funny how those stories come to fruition when you talk about one-stop shops to really where the destination was meant to be for them. And Denver has a lot of those type of stories, man. So shout out obviously to Denver for what they're doing, but yeah, man, it's a lot of great stories to tell.
Oh, indeed. And let's get into it, discussing this 2023 NBA Finals that was. Last time we talked about this series, we were on the eve of Game 3 of the NBA Finals. The series was tied up 1 game apiece between the Heat and the Nuggets. Denver took full control of the series in the third quarter of Game 3, explode for 29 points as a team in the period after a rather close back-and-forth contest early on, received a pair of 30-point triple-double outings from Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, including contributions from reserves such as Christian Brown, as the rookie dropped 15 points on 7 for 8 shooting in 19 minutes off the bench. They helped the Nuggets go up by as many as 21 points in the latter portion of the second half to take a 15-point win down in Miami, and they never looked back, going as far as to withstand a late rally by the Heat and a 21-point night from Jimmy Butler to cut Denver's double-digit lead to 5 with 8:42 left to play in the fourth quarter of Game 4. Aaron Gordon stepped up with a game-high 27 points on 11 for 15 shooting from the floor to go alongside a 2010 night from Jokic and a double-double outing by Murray in conjunction with Bruce Brown, scoring 11 of his 21 points in the final frame to help the Nuggets leave South Beach up 3-1 after capturing a 108-95 victory. In addition to a closely contested Game 5 that came down in the final minutes of play, late surge from Jimmy Butler would not be enough to help spell Miami's shooting woes that will prove to be their ultimate doom, as Denver managed to win the battle on the boards, which would prove to be key down the stretch, as a crucial offensive board and tip in from Bruce Brown will prove to be the defining shot of the series to provide the Nuggets with their first Larry O'Brien trophy in franchise history, pulling out a 94-89 victory to give the Mile High City an NBA championship for once and for all. Let's just get to it, man. Cut to the chase. What are your overall takeaways from this series?
The battle of the role players. That's really what it went down to. We knew the stars were eventually going to show up. Bam played his butt off this series, man. Bam showed up. You can question Jimmy Butler in a lot of moments, which rightfully so deserving, but he did for the most part show up. Is there everybody else that didn't? Anytime you go into between Game 4 and Game 5 and you're shooting 3, you only make 3 3-pointers the whole between both of those games, it's a problem. Other people have to step up. And the way Miami's offense is set up is you have to have Jimmy go crazy, Bam do his thing, and everybody else just has to make threes. When you don't have shooting the way that you need it for those two, you're asking Jimmy and Bam to take on an extra load that, quite frankly, this playoff showed they're not ready. They're not capable of taking. And because of that, Miami suffered. Yeah, they had key contributions from Kyle Lowry in big moments. He made some big threes, especially in Game 5, to really keep the Miami Heat close enough so Jimmy Butler can make his late surge. But it was but Denver's bench and depth was so key into not just holding Denver afloat in situations where they needed to stay afloat until Jamal Murray and Jokic take over, but in moments like Game 3 and Game 4, where Jokic and Murray didn't have to do much of anything. The role players just took over. Game 3, you mentioned his name, Chris Braun. That rookie came out of nowhere and put a spark on both ends of the floor defensively, and more specifically turning things from defense into offense in the transition game. That helped Denver get up front big time, and Denver never looked back. But Game 4, it was the Bruce Brown show. Bruce Brown came out of nowhere, making a lot of threes down the stretch.
KCP.
KCP as well. And when you need him to, Aaron Gordon. Stepping between those three, especially Jokic and Murray, they just sat back and said, all right, y'all got this. We good. And Game 5, when you needed it the most, yes, Bruce Brown and KCP really sealed the deal at the end. They were the two biggest ones. But there's one player that we haven't mentioned at all throughout any of this that had a horrible offensive series. But he was huge defensively and was contributing on the rebounding side that really that gave Denver the boost that they needed to push forward. That's Michael Porter Jr. We criticize Michael Porter Jr. oftentimes because he's just known for shooting the ball, and that's it. You're not going to get anything else out of him. He showed his versatility in this NBA Finals by rebounding, defending well, blocking shots, and more specifically in Game 5, transition game. And those are the areas that really help take Denver coast enough so that Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, when necessary, can make the timely buckets to seal the deal. And that's the difference that from between Games 3 and 5. Miami just simply didn't have enough. And they needed everyone to be A-plus performance, plus Jimmy Butler having the playoff Jimmy games that we know that he can have, plus Bam Adebayo to have the same similar type games for them to even have a chance of really taking things to the next level. And Denver's overall talent allowed margin for error, but was still powerful enough to overpower Miami in so many different ways. And that's really what took place.
My overall takeaway from this series, man, is Denver knew how to beat Miami in so many ways. They could beat them in the transition game, from beyond the arc, on the glass. That's what it came down to, mostly on the glass. And I'm glad you highlighted MPJ, because he had a sequence late in that fourth quarter where he got a huge defensive stop, got a steal, and went between the legs in transition on Duncan Robinson and finished for a layup. I didn't even know he had that in him. And I was proud to see that. Even in spite of having a rough shooting night from the floor, he still finished the game, I believe, in Game 5 with a double-double.
Yeah.
And that's because he didn't stop attacking. He trusted himself. And he determined that, hey, I'm going to have to find a way, recognize, I'm going to have to find a way to leave my mark on this game and my mark on this series. And the way he did it is the way that you said it. Do defense and rebounding. The little things. Denver shot under 20% from 3 in Game 5. If you had told me that before the game, I'd have said this series is going back to South Beach. I don't care what the Heat shoot from three-point land. And yet they still were able to pull out the game because they were plus 13 in the rebounding department. And I've been saying this for many years, doing shows on War Media, and other platforms. In the playoffs, the team that wins in the rebounding category is usually a team that's going to win the series. Mm-hmm. And the team that get the 50-50 balls is going to be the team that do it. They had more depth. And anytime you're a team like Miami and Nikola Jokic is off the floor and you can't win the non-Jokic minutes the way that they were unable to do in this series, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. You're in serious trouble. And Nikola Jokic, he's just, he right now, yeah, you could say he's the best player in the league if you want right now, based off of being the king of the summer per se, having the NBA Finals MVP in hand is alongside of the Larry O'Brien trophy. Like, this dude was getting triple doubles in his sleep. And you look up, you're not even paying attention to the stat sheet, but you look up, you like, man, he got 30 and 20 and 10. Jamal Murray, regular season resume, questionable. In the playoffs, his last 2 playoff appearances, he showed up and showed out. I saw a group that had gone through the fire in years past that I had some questions about, but they answered it. And the way that they did it was with their defense, to my surprise. Something that this Nuggets team struggled mightily with over the last several years prior to making their run this year in 2023. I'm just impressed with what I saw from Denver, impressed with what I saw from Miami throughout the run, but it was unfortunate to see Jimmy Butler not have enough lift. Looked like, he was having some issues with his legs. And I think that's why you didn't see him elevate once he beat his man off the dribble last night and got inside the paint and he sought to pass it off. And KCP, playing the passing lanes better than anybody, found a way to get a big time steal. That was the defining moment of this series for Miami. And it was a turnover that they couldn't afford to have, but they lost this series. To me, Miami did, because the thing that was their bread and butter through the first 3 rounds of the playoffs failed them. And that was the 3-ball. They didn't have it. Denver, whether they were making threes or missing threes, they had multiple ways in which they could beat Miami. And they did that. So credit to them. But my overall takeaway from this series is that, as it is for most playoffs that I've seen in years past, it comes down to matchups. And Denver proved to be a riddle that Miami could not solve. Bam Adebayo, incredible series. But if I'm a guy like Bam, I'm trying to get back in the gym after, a couple weeks off and trying to figure out ways in which I can elevate my touch between the restricted area. Because I missed a lot of chippies.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. If I'm Bam, I missed a lot of chippies. Yeah, I'm powerful. I can throw it down with the best of them. But man, I cost my team a few buckets, missing some chippies around the rim. I got to figure out a way to get that right. And if I'm Jimmy Butler, I got to figure out a way to get healthy and reflect and think about how can I make my dream to guide the Miami Heat to an NBA championship a reality down the road in the years to come.
No, they're all valid points. And I think in a lot of ways, both of these teams are a testament to one terminology that you need in this league: player development. The fact that you were able to play 4 undrafted players in your key rotation and make an NBA Finals, that should tell you something. The fact that you were able, that's just on Miami side. Denver side, you developed Jokic, you developed Murray, you developed Aaron Gordon, you developed Bruce Brown, because Bruce Brown wasn't shooting threes like that last year. these players that have grown and developed within the environment that was given to them in Denver and the environment that was given to them in Miami, they showed out. They showed out this playoff series. And it's a testament to what it means to grow what you have. Not all teams are like that, but that's what happens when you have a winning culture. And Denver was building that culture for a long time, and it's paid off. And Miami is continuing that forward progress of building the culture, of building the championship culture that they already have. And what's scary about this for Denver too, your core is young. Jamal Murray is only like what, 26, 27? Nikola Jokic is 28. You can run this table for a good 4 or 5 years. This is their window now to really build himself into a dynasty. And that's what Mike Malone was really emphasizing. You know, as soon as the game was over, he's saying, I want more. We need more. I'm already thinking of the next season about how we can build a dynasty, because this is the best window to do that. And they made a trade with, I think a day or two, either that same day or the day or two before, where they trade a lot of the draft picks to open up that window and exploit what they have. I forgot the team who it was with, but they traded draft picks with the team.
Oklahoma City.
Right. That's what it was. You're right. Oklahoma City. You know, they're smelling blood. And since then, now that they know what it's like to officially win a championship, they have the blueprint, the team, the roster, and the coaching staff to get it done again.
I can repeat the trade for you because Woj reported it. And the Nuggets are acquiring a 2024 first and second round pick and a 2023 second round pick in a deal with the Oklahoma City Thunder for a protected 2029 first round pick, which was told to Woj, Adrian Wojnarowski, senior NBA insider for ESPN, this past Friday. And Woj also reported that the Nuggets will get the least favorable of OKC's first round picks in the 2024 draft and the 37th pick in this year's draft, set to take place on June the 22nd. So yeah, and it makes sense for Denver if you think about it, because what is Denver mostly done when it comes to constructing their roster mostly that they currently have? They've drafted.
Yep.
The only main trades that they made, or blockbuster trades that they made, was for Aaron Gordon, and I'm trying to think of another one. Like, they got KCP and free agency, right? Bruce Brown as well, I believe.
I think so.
I know Bruce Brown came in free agency. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was a guy that I know he was part of the Westbrook trade with the Lakers in Washington. I'm looking it up right now. I know for a fact, though, that Bruce Brown was a free agency pickup, but for the most part, they've drafted extremely well. Okay, I have it right here. They did make a trade with Washington to get KCP alongside of Ish Smith, because they traded, that's right, they traded Monty Morris, who was a backup point guard there for a few years, and Will Barton, who was a longtime fan favorite of the franchise, and I believe was the all-time record holder for three-pointers made in Nuggets history at the time of the trade. So I know that was a big trade that drew mixed reviews from some of the faithful in Denver, because those guys were fan favorites, but it paid off. And KCP, a guy that we know had previous championship experience playing on that 2020 Lakers squad that won down in the bubble. But it makes sense for a team like the Nuggets to do these moves and make trades, because with them being a small market franchise, and I always talk about this, you have to know how to draft well, especially when free agents aren't seeking to flock to your city each and every year. And in an era where most of the top stars are locked up to max deals for at least the next several years within their respective markets. So unless if they're requesting trades, the likelihood of you being able to get them is slim to none, unless if you got an absurd amount of draft capital. So I like the move, and I know a lot of people like teams that are built that way. Me personally, I don't care. You know, it's no one path directly to get a championship, but I give kudos to the Denver on the way that they build it. And speaking of Denver, you talk about how this could be a potential dynasty. I'm a little bit reserved on that because I know with the new CBA that's coming up, and I got to read more on that myself, that's going to impact the way a lot of these teams are built and constructed, as well as how much money they're going to be able to give out to prospective free agency, and as well as, draft picks. What do you think of Denver's chances to repeat next year? Because when I look at the West, man, it's open.
Yeah.
When I look at the league, it's open. Because I was having conversations with my guy, Torrin Stagger, who I had on a couple months ago during the play-in round. And we were talking about how Miami was a star guard who we're going to discuss later, away from this series potentially being 2-2 through 4 games. I agree with that. He also was, talking to me about how Denver, is nice of a team as they are, like they weren't like a juggernaut. They didn't have this juggernaut feeling to me. Like, what do you think of their chances to repeat next year?
Man, I ain't, this way, it ain't guaranteed. I tell you that right now, it ain't guaranteed.
I agree.
Because like you said, the West and the league itself now is wide open. And I think now the fact that people know that Denver can win it all, they're going to start shifting their rosters as much as possible to combat what Denver has. And I can't help but think, especially this offseason, where there is a decent amount of players that can really shift the needle like that. They make the right moves. You may have something. You may have something there that can overpower Denver like that. A lot of this, a little bit of luck in this, because if Boston beat Miami, I can't say that Denver's going to win in 5 games. You just can't say that. That's a completely different makeup of a roster.
I agree. I think Denver would have been a favorite on paper, but I definitely think you're going to get a longer series.
Yeah. So right now, I can't guarantee that. If you're talking about a healthy Kawhi, a healthy Paul George, good Lord, let Anthony Davis be healthy for most of the season. And that's just between the LA teams. That's not even including what a healthy Zion will do in New Orleans. A healthy Phoenix roster team. If Chris Paul comes back to Phoenix, if he can finally stay healthy, you just never know what could be made. What happens with Damian Lillard? Let him go east. That's a problem.
We're gonna get into him. We're gonna get into him, ladies and gentlemen, coming soon.
Yeah, like there's a lot of different factors that play into it, to where, based on the moves that are made, I don't know. You can't guarantee that Denver. This was probably their best shot of winning a championship this year. With everything taking place, this was for sure the best shot, and they exploited it. But I can't guarantee that they'll win it again next year, back to back. I don't see that happening right now.
Oh, I understand. I get it, because for one, the last team to repeat was the Warriors, who did it in 17 and 18. Mm-hmm. And even they had to go through hell and back to repeat, because as we know, they had a amazing 7-game series in the Western Conference Finals with a challenger in the Houston Rockets.
Yeah.
That at one point had a 3-2 lead in that series. So these teams are coming, and they have every right to try and load up in an effort to get a title after what they witnessed this past season, especially when you consider the fact that we had an 8th seed in the Miami Heat become the first 8th seed in the last quarter century to make it to the NBA Finals. But I want to move back to Miami real quick. Eric Spoelstra, Tyler Herro. He was finally cleared to play and return to action from his broken right hand in Game 5. Was out there and shoot around, looked good, but Spo never put him in the game. Should he have sought the call on Tyler Herro's number, in your opinion?
No. Um, it would have been way too risky. Because obviously conditioning wise, you can only play him limited minutes. Two, even though he was scheduled to play or reported that he was good enough to play,
Yeah, he was cleared.
He was cleared to play. Am I really going to trust the fact that his hand was healed enough to where he could shoot the ball in the way that we know he could shoot the ball? No, I don't think so. I think if it wasn't a diehard situation where win or go home, he wanted to play. He wouldn't have been cleared to play. But I also feel like what came to my mind when I saw this question was Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant got cleared to play in the NBA Finals, tore that Achilles. I'm not saying that Tyler Herro's in that same position. But what I am saying is, just because you was rushing him to get back into the NBA Finals to play a playoff game for a hand injury, that don't mean anything else in the body can wear down because the body ain't caught up. And that could be detrimental to Miami, where you're not just pushing them back for a game, you're pushing them back on potentially a season. And you as a franchise, you're already down 3-1. So it's pretty much statistically pretty much impossible to come back and win 3 straight games for that to be possible. And on top of that, even though Miami struggled, they were within striking distance. It wasn't like they was down by like 20 plus points. There were moments that they were down by double digits, but they were able to claw their way back in to where Jimmy Butler had his late surge, and they were down by 2 or 3 points before the Miami had their meltdown in the final seconds of the game.
They was up at one point.
Yeah.
And this was a team that you could never take lightly throughout the playoffs because they had so many double-digit comeback victories. I think they tied the Warriors last year in game 2 with the most wins in a single playoff run when trailing by 10 plus points or more over the last 25 years.
Exactly. So there wasn't, even though there could have been a need for Tyler Herro to play, it wouldn't have been a wise decision to put him out there and play, knowing that you could be risking so much more than just him just trying to get his feet wet and shoot the ball effectively. He can do so much more. And he was already limited to a point where, if you had to rush him to get back for that game, you was probably better off not playing him anyways.
I feel you. Let's, discuss Jimmy Butler. This guy had some late game struggles down the stretch in game 5. We discussed a few of those in brief detail, such as the turnover late that proved to be costly. However, if it wasn't for the late surge that he had, Miami probably wouldn't even stood a chance at all to even potentially force a game 6, an effort in which they fell short in doing. But he managed to post 21-6 in nearly 5 line against the Nuggets, shot 41.3% from the floor. He stated in his post-game remarks that he still believes the Heat will at some point win a championship with him leading the way. What do you make of the series that he had in spite of a playoff run that was filled with some incredible moments, nonetheless, regardless of what the national public might think of him as of late, based on the collapse that Miami had in this year's finals?
This is what it means to be a max player in the league. You are a max player. You have that tells me you have the talent to take this franchise to the promised land. And even though Jimmy did that this year, there's levels to this. And this showed in this go-round that Jimmy Butler is not at that level that we expect him to when it comes to living up to the highest expectation of willing your team to victory when you need them the most. Yes, like you mentioned, a lot of great playoff moments. Changed the whole direction of this franchise. from one and done to literally being an NBA, to being a finals contender. He's great. But moments like that, I will say he should have started his late surge earlier in game 5.
I think a lot of people feel that way.
He started, I want to say, around the 6-minute mark. It's like, and he was already down double digits at the time. It's like, okay, you're pushing it. You should have started a lot earlier. Once that fourth quarter hit, it's go time. And I respect Jimmy Butler for having a LeBron-esque approach to the game, getting his teammates involved, facilitating, creating for others. But Jimmy has that switch when he really wants to use it. And he chose not to use it in the time that he needed to use it. And yes, a lot of it could have been fatigue, for sure. He didn't have a lot of lift, like as you mentioned earlier in the show. So that definitely plays a role. And it doesn't help that he wasn't getting the help that he needed from his other teammates. So that's an additional burden. But that's why they give you the big bucks, man. That's why they make you a max player. It's for moments like that where you got to rise to the occasion. And this go around, he didn't have it. And honestly reminded me of the bubble, where he had that great game 2 performance. He went all out, gave it his all, grilled Miami to a victory. After that, there's no more. The rest of the team had to come through and didn't work. Jimmy Butler has shown us that I can take you to the promised land, but I don't know if he could be the main guy to get you there to win it. He's going to need that additional side piece that can take things to the next level. And you know that Jimmy Butler, when it counts the most, for the most part, he will deliver on both ends of the floor. But Jimmy Butler is not the guy to me now, when you look at him, to say he can be the MVP of this final series and take us to the promised land. He'll take you there, but he's not going to be able to you may not win it with him there. You need some additional help or star power to roll with him for that to be possible.
That's an understandable take. I mean, this is a guy who, in his 3 years with the Heat, or 4 years actually, has led them to the Eastern Conference Finals round 3 out of those 4 years, and to the NBA Finals 2 out of those 4 years, and come up short on both occasions. Nearly led them to 3 finals through his first 4 seasons with the franchise, if not for a missed shot from beyond the arc in Game 7 of last year's conference finals at home, down in the 305. You talk about that missing piece. Where do you believe Miami goes from here in an offseason where several key role players are set to enter the free agency market? We're talking about guys like Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, Kevin Love, who were key contributors on this year's team in the midst of this run that helped them get to the finals. Who do you believe, or which pieces do you believe are the missing links in order for the Heat to eventually get over the hump and capture the franchise's first championship since 2013?
The Heat need 3 components for them to be ultimately successful. Obviously, 1, you need shooters. So you can keep as many shooters as possible from this roster, keep them. 2, they need big men depth to aid Bam, because they're getting killed in the rebounding department. You need to add that. But the third most important component for me, you need shot creation. It don't matter if it's from the wing. It doesn't matter if it's from the point guard. You need someone that when Jimmy Butler can't get a shot off, you can say, hey, here you go to work. And it's only a select few in this free agent pool that can give you that. And it's funny how we're talking about this. Shams broke a recent report saying that Miami tried to trade for Kyrie Irving before he got traded to Dallas. You need to see if Kyrie's will be willing to come to South Beach. That's someone that will get you some buckets.
I think that's a move that they will seek to explore. I think it's going to be another move that they seek to explore via trade, and we're getting to that, down the road, because there is an all-star that expressed interest in Miami should the event transpire that he happens to get traded.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy that I thought a lot about when watching this Miami Heat roster go to work and saying to myself many of the nights after these games and the final buzzer sounded, that guy can help this team. But yeah, they definitely need a shot creator. And I agree with you. They definitely need a big man that's going to take the pressure off of Bam. And not only take the pressure off of Bam, I think move Bam to his ideal spot, which is really the 4.
Right.
Bam, in my opinion, is not a guy that you want to just be playing at the 5. And in a series like the one they had with Denver, I tell you who they missed, even though he's on an expensive contract right now, and I know they wouldn't seek to bring him back on it by any stretch, even if they could trade for him. They missed a guy like PJ Tucker, man.
Yeah.
They missed a guy, even though he's undersized, they could have used his girth and his strength in the interior a little bit to bang with them guys a little bit. He'd have helped spot Bam on a few possessions. But yeah, they got to get some size. If you could keep some shooters, if not, add some shooters. In the event that you may lose a Max Strus or Gabe Vincent, guys who I think earn their bag and then some. I think some teams will overpay for their services. So you may have to get you a couple shooters and add Duncan Robinson into the primary rotation once again after he displayed what he did, because he made some plays off the dribble when the Nuggets were just aggressively closing out on him, to where I was like, man, I don't remember you having that in your bag a few years ago in the bubble, and I was impressed to see it, and I was happy to see it. But yeah, they got to get a shot creator. You right, a shot creator that could take some pressure off of Jimmy, and they damn sure got to get some size, because they were getting annihilated on the glass. And I look back at some of these series, and I don't even know how they made it through against teams like Boston, who had size over them, and even were able to hold their own with the Nuggets, in spite of getting out-rebounded by +10 on most nights. But last talking point when it comes to the finals is Nikola Jokic. Takes home NBA Finals MVP honors en route to capturing his first title, on the way to becoming the first player in league history to lead the playoffs in total points, rebounds, and assists. He averaged 30, 14, and 7 through 5 games versus Miami. I know he may not be a guy that we consider personally in our top 5 centers of all time list, but where do you consider him among the top centers that ever played a game following this playoff run, which I would say you have to put up there with Giannis's from 2 years ago, as well as Dirk Nowitzki in 2011?
He may be at the bottom half of that top 10. He might squeeze himself in there. For sure, top 15, but he might squeeze. He has a decent chance to squeeze himself into that maybe 9th or 10th spot, because of everything mentioned earlier in the show. There was so much dominance in the previous areas of basketball, to where the big man was the center, one of the focal pieces of your team. You can't win without one. And a lot of those guys had a lot of winning success, and stat lines are just so ridiculous that even though Jokic just was great, it was unheard of. It's really unheard of, during that earlier era. But the best thing that Jokic has to his advantage is the fact that he's still young. Same with Giannis. That's the best thing they have to this advantage. If Jokic continues to win championships, then it's like, okay, hold on, we gotta reconsider this. But for him to win his first ring, it's like what Jalen Rose said in post game after the finals. This championship put Jokic in that elitist type of status, to where you have to start having a conversation of, okay, 2-time MVP and a champion and a finals MVP. you have to start thinking about him similar to the way you thought about Giannis. And they have the same resumes now. 2-time MVPs, finals MVPs, and champions. So I wouldn't say that, he's top 5 for sure. No. He might squeeze in top 10. But if you could put Giannis in the top 10, you can make a valid argument that Jokic is right there next to him.
I'll say this. He's not my top 5. He cracks my top 10. He might slightly be under my top 5. I would really have to sit down and think about it. But I do believe that Nikola Jokic has become to this Denver Nuggets organization what Hakeem Olajuwon was to the Houston Rockets organization in the mid-1990s.
Okay.
And if he can find a way to add a couple of more championships in Denver of all places, yeah, the conversation has to be had. I hold a lot of weight when it comes to players winning championships in markets that you least expect them to do it. When Hakeem won his championships in Houston, a lot of people didn't expect him to do that. Even though those 2 championships came when the greatest player of that era was sitting at home, you still have to respect that. I don't give a damn where you stand on that. You have to respect that. In Jokic's case, I have to respect what he did for Denver because it had never been done before.
Right.
And while I do believe that Carmelo Anthony brought this franchise back to relevancy, Jokic has taken it to another level. And I think that deserves to be lauded. No differently than what Giannis did in Milwaukee.
Right.
In spite of the fact that Milwaukee had won a championship 50 years prior to Giannis delivering another one. You have to respect accomplishments like that in a day and age, even the social media era age, where, let's be real, you got a lot of people that like the Nuggets brand of basketball and their style of play, but we not really checking for them like that year after year. We're just not. And it's not to belittle Jokic by any stretch, but for when you have players take organizations that have never won to the mountaintop, that count for something. And over the years, we've seen big men do this. You had Walton do it with Portland in the 70s.
Yep.
You had Olajuwon do it with Houston in the 90s, and he won too. I'm interested to see what Jokic is going to do moving forward in Denver, but he's just outside of the top 5 to me. And I think you can have a conversation for sure if he does win more championships and add more MVPs to the mantle, be it finals MVPs or regular season MVPs, which he happened to win back-to-back in the same fashion as Giannis did the 2 years prior to Jokic getting his 2.
No, that's very valid points. And you talk about people that made franchises that weren't valuable enough to win in smaller markets to win. Another name that comes to mind is David Robinson.
Yeah, in San Antonio, and we forget about him.
Yeah,
we forget about him, and I seen a couple people on Twitter trying to make the argument saying, well, Jokic is better than David Robinson. I can't say that just yet. I can't. You can say that David Robinson's legacy in San Antonio will forever be connected to Tim Duncan because that's who he happened to win his 2 rings with. But at the same time, David Robinson led the league in scoring. David Robinson was an MVP recipient as well, even though some people questioned it. And when he happened to win his scoring title, he had to score 73 on the last day of the season to get it. If you know, you know. So, I mean, that's tough as well. I seen a lot of Robinson Jokic debates last night as well, which is what led me to bring up this question. talking on this week's edition of Open Run.
And not to mention too with Robinson, he also got the Olympic side on him too.
Yeah, the dream team.
That dream team.
Yeah.
I mean that how can you argue against that dream team, right?
You can't, because if it's not for the dream team, we talk about the Euro-centric marketing in the NBA. You don't even have European-born players, I think, in the NBA without the dream team.
Yeah.
I've heard Dirk Nowitzki talk about how watching that dream team is what inspired him to take up the game growing up in Germany. So it really influenced a generation and beyond as far as their overall impact on the team and whatnot. So I have to give credit to David Robinson to a great degree, and I can't overlook him. But I want to move on and get into some recent remarks from a 7-time NBA All-Star, Damian Lillard. He was on Showtime's The Last Stand with Brian Custard, sharing his hypothetical trade scenario destinations, even though he expressed that his loyalty still remains in Portland with the Trailblazers. In the unforeseen event, if he was to get traded, he said that Miami and Brooklyn will be his top destinations. What do you make of
that? Hell of a PR move. Like,
I think so too.
Hell of a PR move, because Damian is letting them know, like, he's giving the blueprint. Let's put it this way. You've heard from me speak on this show in the past couple, especially since the draft combine. Damian Lillard is trying to play with 3 players: Mikal Bridges, Jaylen Brown, or Pascal Siakam. Those are the 3 people that if he wants to stay in Portland, he really wants to play with, that he has potentially a good shot of bringing to Portland. Why would he say Brooklyn? Mikal Bridges is there.
Yeah. He alluded to that. He said Mikal Bridges, my boy, and he said he would be interested in playing in Miami because he likes Bam Adebayo. And I'm not gonna lie, Miami would be a perfect destination.
Perfect.
I would love to see it. I know a lot of people who would love to see it. I've been trying to get Damian Lillard out of Portland the last 3 years. I made no secret about it. I respect his loyalty to Portland, but it's gonna be hard to want to sit around, I think, personally, and allow the front office to retool a roster around you in the effort to help catapult you not only back into contention, but to possibly deliver on bringing a Larry O'Brien trophy back to the Pacific Northwest.
Agree. And if I'm Damian Lillard, thinking about this is probably the best draft class you have to take advantage of when you talk about, using for Portland's advantage if you were to leave. This might be your best chance to be like, okay, y'all do got the 3rd pick. Keep that, and then I can just go. Like, it just makes more sense for me right now, if I'm Damian Lillard, to want to get out of there. You secured your bread. You gave the city everything, literally you can, to make that franchise relevant again. And you did it in such a fashion. But the writing was on the wall when they let CJ McCollum go. Like, you should have known just off of that alone. All right, it's time. The time is winding down for me to get this window, because they haven't been able to replace him really much with anything outside of maybe Shaedon Sharpe and Simons. But it's hard to win with that. So if I'm Damian Lillard, yeah, I'm glad you did a PR move to say, I want to stay here, but just let you know, just in case y'all really want to go there, I bet here's my 2 teams I really want to go to. It's a great move, but boy, I'm hitting Jimmy up right now. I'm hitting Jimmy and Bam up right now. I'm like, yo, hey Jimmy, I saw how you needed some help from down there. I can be that piece for you. Let's make this work. Let's make this happen, because he will be the perfect play. That would be the perfect place for him to be the starting point guard and to play next to Jimmy Butler, or someone he can rely on both ends of the floor and be durable with all year long. and you still got Bam over there too, I mean, that's ideal. I don't see how you don't try to make that call right now and say, you know what, time is now. Let's make this move. Damian Lillard has to go with that. And even if you put him in Brooklyn, you're not necessarily going to win in Brooklyn. They're retooling too. So, Brooklyn sounds nice. Yes, you're in the New York market, big media market. I get it. If you want to win, how bad do you really want to win? If you want to win that bad, the best chance for you to go to where you can get everything you want and get the best chance to win is with the franchise that just got to the finals. You might as well go to Miami and get it done over there. And that's your best chance to do it.
So you believe that Miami is the place that gives him the best chance to win an NBA championship?
In correlation with everything else that he's looking for. When you talk about market, when you talk about business and how he's expanding his business realms, we talk about connections and connectivity, because like you mentioned, Bam was his guy down there. It makes and you talk about winning culture basketball, with Eric Spoelstra being the best, pretty much the best coach in the game. It does make the most sense. Yeah, Boston to me will be probably the other place, but you will probably have to get rid of Jaylen Brown to make that happen.
Chris Haynes has been on the record saying that he doesn't see Dame going to Boston at all. And I take a lot of weight from that, because for those who don't know, Chris Haynes started out as a beat writer for the Portland Trail Blazers before he became a prominent member of Bleacher Report, and you seeing him in your living room on Turner's crew, as a sideline reporter. So I have to put a lot of weight into that in what he's saying in regards to Dame. Odds of going to Boston are not really that high. And when I think about it, yeah, Miami would be the ideal destination if he was to leave Portland. It would be. You make great points. I'm with it. But if Portland is really, really serious about contending, if they can hit on that number 3 overall pick, and possibly, I'm going to just say it, if they get Brandon Miller at number 3, and you get a big man via trade that can protect the rim, that can serve as a pick and roll partner, if not a pick and pop partner, next to Dame, that might be ideal enough to get Dame to stay if he's really that committed to trying to win a championship in Portland. I don't know who that big man is. I honestly don't. Give me some time to think about it. I'll let you know. But that to me is the only way he can stay with the Blazers. But if he's looking for a win now situation with all the pieces in place, he knows where he has to go, and that's East. And I think he listed Miami first for a reason, because he's paying attention and he's watching, just like a lot of these guys. Some of these guys who even made the playoffs, unlike Dame, are probably watching. Like, damn, we let an opportunity slip by us, and we got Miami representing the East in the finals. And I know Dame looking at that like, man, I haven't gotten a chance to play in the playoffs the last 2 years. Yep. And the last time I played in the playoffs, I was lighting this same team up mostly for 50 points. Yep. So I know that I can help this team that needs a shot creator at the guard spot like me.
Yeah, make it happen, man. Make it happen, man. Dame to the 305. Let's get it, man. Let's get it.
Hey, at some point, he has a decision that he needs to make. And I'm not saying he's running from the grind. But if he want to get back to the true grind, and that's compete for championships, he may have to take an offer that he can't refuse. And when I say that, I mean elsewhere and not in Portland. We know that no matter what, number 0 will forever hang in the rafters when it's all said and done. But I want to move on to discuss some rumors that have been surfacing across the league and asking you whether or not you buy or sell the following rumors. Starting with, oddly enough, the Portland Trailblazers. Been some reports lately that says that the Blazers are open to moving Anthony Simons. You buying that or are you selling that?
I'm buying it because Portland is in a situation where, if you want to win, unfortunately, you saw what that looks like when you have another small guard paired with Damian Lillard. You didn't win a championship with or get to the finals with CJ McCollum. What makes you think at this present moment in time, a younger version of him is going to take you to the promised land with Damian Lillard at point guard? It's just not going to work. But he could be intriguing to whoever team is interested for Damian Lillard to help them with their retooling process, because he's young, but he's not a scrub. He's the real deal. He can ball. So yeah, I'm buying it, and I've been hearing that since the draft combine. I've been hearing that since the draft combine. That Portland is open to trading that pick, to trading Anthony Simons and the third pick in a package deal for a star player. They want a star player to come to Portland to play with Damian Lillard. So whoever that person is, we'll see if any that comes to happen. But that was going along even last month. So it's bound to happen.
Yeah, and I know that was something that you reported, and it has been a heavy league-wide rumor. I've heard it from not only you, but several people I know that's closely connected that's a possibility. You're right. Simons is definitely no slouch. He averaged 21.1 points last season. That's a season high. Had 4.1 assists per game, shot 37% from three-point land. In his first year as a full-time starter. And he's under contract for the next 3 years is $77.7 million. That's a very reasonable deal. And this guy has gotten better each and every season. So whoever lands him is more than likely getting a guy who can evolve into possibly a future all-star. So it's some teams that I could see biting if the Portland Trailblazers are indeed trying to find a way to move him. Want to move on to Golden State. Keeping their core together for at least one more year. Are you buying or are you selling that following rumor?
I'm buying it only because what are you going to replace it with? And how are you going to convince Steph Curry that if you sell on your core, you may not be competing? Now, this is where it gets interesting, because I believe Steph is going to be just like Damian Lillard, loyal to the core. I'm not going anywhere, etc. But the report that everybody on your team is available to go outside of Steph Curry, you can get some capital back. But what does that roster look like? I don't know.
No one does.
Because at this point, you also got to consider that the Warriors are still they're in the pay. They still have one of the highest payroll taxes. So if they're continuing to go through that, I just can't see, especially for this 1 year, considering that Mike Myers is gone. I just don't see it. I just look like it'll be too much to trade and get rid of, to figure out, to put Steph in the position to continue to be playoff mode, to continue playoff mode. I just don't see that happening. I think some retooling is going to take place. That might include players like Jordan Poole being out the window for sure. But I do think that Steph wants to keep trying to win championships. If you can't get quality pieces back that can elude to that, you might as well keep the core as long as you can, because Steph Curry is in his prime, but he's on the outskirts of that prime too. You got to you still got some good years out of Steph Curry. You don't want to waste it by bringing in talent that's ready for a rebuild instead of a talent that's ready for a retool. You might as well keep the core and just retool at that point, because you got to maximize the talent and the years that you have of Steph Curry.
I'm buying that they run things back, but is this a championship caliber team? If they do, I don't think it is. I just don't. I do believe that Jordan Poole is target number one as far as the Warriors seeking the shot players, especially if it can help them to cut back on some salary a little bit. But running back the same squad that lost to the Lakers in the second round, I don't think that that's an ideal strategy. I just don't. It's cool letting Klay Thompson and Draymond Green play out the final year of their contracts. Maybe, if all things go well, you can sign them to a team-friendly deal come the summer of 2024. Steph, yeah, as you alluded to, he's still one of the best players in our game. Andrew Wiggins is still on a solid contract for the next 4 years. You got key contributors locked up, such as Kevin Looney, Jonathan Kuminga, and Gary Payton II. But they got to get a big, because Looney can't do all the hard lifting.
Yep.
Looney does an incredible job, or has done an incredible job over the last few postseasons in which the Warriors have made deep runs in the playoffs. I don't know how he does it, but they got to get that big man situation rectified, because when he gets into foul trouble and they go small, what the opposition is going to do. They're going to go big and in turn, they're going to feast, and it's going to lead to a lot of problems. But yeah, they'll keep the core together, because truth be told, according to reports, that's what Steph wants. And they're going to value what he has to say, especially in the immediate departure of Bob Myers and Golden State's ownership group not knowing who's going to take his place. So at this current moment, we don't even know who's going to take Bob Myers' place is the lead guy in the front office. So we have to wait and see. But I do buy that they're going to keep that core together for one more year. Now, we got another rumor in regards to two all-star point guards who once upon a time were teammates in Houston, James Harden and Chris Paul. It's been some reports that there's a possibility that these two guards could be traded for one another. The Suns, they're said to be currently in the process of making a decision on Chris Paul. James Harden is trying to make a decision as to whether or not he wants to re-sign with the Sixers or go elsewhere. Do you see a sign and trade deal taking place between CP3 and the Beard?
Do I see it?
Yeah. Are you buying or selling it?
Let me say it this way. I can see it, but I'm not buying it. I can see it being possible. I'm pretty sure they'll evaluate and look into it. Because the connections make sense. If you're going to bring Chris Paul, always goes to areas where there's familiarity. His journeyman has been with familiar connections. He has familiar connections with Daryl Morey, and with him being in the front office. So that's something he can trust. James Harden also needs to figure out what he wants to do with his contract situation. If he opts out, you're gonna have to do a sign and trade to bring him to Phoenix, etc. And he's going to have to take a team-friendly deal for that to be possible. But this is why I say no, or I'm not buying it. Because I don't think Chris Paul really wants to go to wants to go to Philly. And I don't think James Harden, as much as we like the idea of James Harden going to Phoenix, I don't think he's thinking that. I think they're both thinking the best comfortable places of winning. Quote unquote, comfortable. There's a reason why James Harden and Houston have been so linked. It's comfortability. It's, it works for him. Chris Paul, to me, would not be comfortable in Philly. I just don't see him. I don't see him doing that. Because Philadelphia makeup right now is pretty much Phoenix 2.0 prior to them getting Kevin Durant. You could have just stayed in, you could just stay in Phoenix with that. So I think Chris Paul, knowing that he can have some leverage as far as where he wants to go, I don't see him going to Philadelphia, even though I do think he needs to go to the East. I don't just see him going to Philadelphia to be like, put me with Joel Embiid and put himself in a situation where he may have to do more work than he did in Phoenix, based on the makeup that happens over there. And on top of that, I just don't see James Harden going to Phoenix knowing that he ain't going to be the man if he goes to Phoenix. And he already saw what that looks like in Philadelphia, and he had success in Philly, but the lights were also bright on the negative side of what that could look like too. And it appears that he just couldn't handle it. So I just don't buy it. It sounds ideal. It really does. But I don't think either of them in a position mentally to want to go there from a comfort perspective to live out long-term deals and getting rings that bad in those areas.
Oh, I'm selling it. I'm selling it to the moon because it's a lot that gotta go right in order for it to happen. Truth be told, I don't think the Sixers would want Chris Paul. And it would be a very sad outcome for Philadelphia because if you think about it, they gave up multiple first-round picks alongside of Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, who was a valuable shooter in Philadelphia on that roster, and Andre Drummond, who was a solid backup big to Embiid to acquire James just 16 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And even though Chris Paul is still one hell of a solid starting point guard when he's healthy, he's 38 years old. And we know that this man has had a history of getting hurt late down the stretch in key games during the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And as talented as Joel Embiid is, and Tyrese Maxey, who is ascending as a talent in this league, if you trade James Harden in order to get the services of Chris Paul, I don't even know if you can say that the Sixers are a true title contender. And then if that happens, James is giving up a lot of money because what that would force him to likely do is to pick up his player option instead of like signing a new deal with Philadelphia or a team with cap space such as the Rockets, who we know he's been linked to. And Brian Windhorst has reported that James Harden could still land a deal that's a max contract that's worth up to $200 million for the next 4 years. So, man, like I don't see it because James will have to sacrifice a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And for Chris Paul, even though he does have connections to Daryl Morey and Tad Brown, who serve as the president of basketball operations and the team president of the Sixers, respectively, like they not trying to do that. They're not trying to do that, especially after the way this season just concluded in the city of Brotherly Love. I can't see that at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. I just think that they would have to entertain it because you're giving up talent to get talent. And that's something that Philadelphia has to be willing to consider, considering, the circumstance at the end with Joel Embiid.
Yeah, they would consider it, but it would be like a last resort thing.
Yeah.
Like James Harden would really have to let them know, like, I don't want to be here.
Right.
In order for them to say, hey, well, would you consider a sign and trade possible? Because we got to do something to stay afloat. Like, we just can't lose you for nothing.
Right.
And in good faith, do that sign and trade deal, which I do believe Daryl Morey and James Harden will be able to do when you think about the relationship that those two have dating back to Houston, which started out 11 years ago. But I want to move on to the New Orleans Pelicans. They're seriously pursuing a top 3 pick in the upcoming NBA draft, according to reports, with eyes on Scoot Henderson. And they have interest in the number 2 overall pick, according to Shams Charania of The Athletic. Are you buying this rumor or are you selling this rumor?
I'm buying it. I'm buying it because this tells you one thing and one thing only. Zion Williamson is on the watch. There's no reason why this came out right after all that Zion Williamson public stunt came out. You telling me Zion Williamson has been over here getting freaky with porn stars, having more than one baby mama, and on top of that, the man ain't seen the court consistently since he's arrived in the league. You just gave this man not too long ago a full max deal. Yeah, you on watch alert now, buddy. So because of that, we've invested so much into you. We're not getting the most out of you right now. So what's an alternative? Because you can't guarantee these next couple drafts are going to hit for them and the talent is going to hit for them in those drafts. It's not a guarantee. This is a prime time top heavy draft. And New Orleans Pelicans have a lot of capital to use. Why not go crazy and be like, and see what you can get out of this thing? And it's nothing, and it's needless to say, Scoot Henderson specifically, because they do need a point guard. They don't have a point guard. So, yeah, you need a point guard that can be the face of your franchise for the future. But I also think, in a lot of ways, this is kind of put Zion Williamson on notice a little bit. Say, look here, man. You ain't been able to stay healthy. You can't get yourself back on the court. You're not even cleared to hoop now. And you've been gone and missing games all this time. And instead of hearing you saying you're making progress, we're hearing you about porn stars and making baby mamas. Come on, man. Like, this is a wake-up call. Like, you got to get it together. And we know that David Griffin, when he really wants to, he will pull the plug and make some moves. Just look what he did for Cleveland with LeBron.
Oh, yeah. Traded the number 1 draft pick and Andrew Wiggins so they could get Kevin Love after LeBron made the decision to rejoin the Cleveland Cavaliers for a second stint back in the summer of 2014, which is hard to believe was 9 years ago. I never forget that day. Never forget that Friday afternoon.
I know, right? Same here, bro. Same here. But to me, that's a wake-up call. They're serious. If they're not trying to pair Scoot with Zion, they're letting Zion know your time is limited now, buddy.
I'm buying it because they currently have the number 14 overall pick in the draft. And even though this is a deep draft and they could get some talent at that pick, like you said, they do need a point guard. My only question is who exactly are they trading? They have some draft capital that they can trade, but a player has to go in return. As much as I want to say that I believe it's Zion, it could be somebody else because either way, they're going to have to give up something to get something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who that player is, but whoever that player is, I would love to know, especially if they're trying to make a trade for the number 2 overall pick in which the Charlotte Hornets own. But I could see the Hornets possibly being interested in Zion. I could. He's from North Carolina. Him in the transition game with LaMelo Ball would be an amazing treat to watch, but I don't know. I don't know, but I'm buying that rumor because, everyone in the league knows and around the league knows that New Orleans needs a point guard, and to get Scoot Henderson into that fold beside a CJ McCollum and you slide him over to the 2, and then you have a Brandon Ingram, a guy who I believe should have a couple more all-star nods to his name, it could still get interesting in New Orleans. Like they have a young nucleus of talent that they could compete with whether Zion's on the floor or not, I just think Zion's too big of a factor for them to consider still trading at this point. Just because when he's been out on the floor,
yeah,
this is a franchise that looks like from time to time that they have what it takes to go on a deep run in the West. I remember we had conversations earlier in the season when Memphis and New Orleans were among the top 2 seeds in the West prior to Zion getting shut down for the season due to unfortunate issues with his knees. But I want to move back to Portland. It's been reported through rumor mills alike that the Blazers are showing interest in center DeAndre Ayton of the Phoenix Suns. Are you buying or are you selling that?
I'm buying it because they know they need a big man. Their big men are trash. That's just the reality of what it is. Big men are trash, and you need someone that's compatible in today's game with Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard, you mentioned earlier about if Portland can get a big man, not just a pick and roll guy, but a pick and pop guy. DeAndre Ayton is good in the pick and pop game. Is it 3-point range? No. But that mid-range is still decent. It's pretty deadly in the mid-range game. And I do think a new scenery, place of scenery for DeAndre Ayton would do him some good. Putting him with Damian Lillard could advance his career. And I think that'll be a good option, knowing that not just the fact that you have Damian Lillard there, you have Chauncey Billups there, who knows what it's like to play with talented big men, aka Rasheed Wallace. That's something that's could be ideal for someone like a DeAndre Ayton. And the Blazers desperately need a big man of that type of caliber to fill that void, especially if you're trying to, whether you keep Damian Lillard or not, but for sure if you're trying to keep him happy, you got to give him something to work with. I can see them really going for it. Do I think it happens? No. But Blazers got to do all their homework to see if that's possible. And I would not be surprised if that is the case with the Suns making it known that DeAndre Ayton is pretty much on the block, on the market.
Yeah, I have to buy that rumor as well, because as we all know, with the health of Yusuf Nurkic and the lack of his availability from time to time over these last few seasons, the Blazers need a big. And they also need a big that can offer more versatility than what Nurkic can provide. And Ayton can do that. You know, on top of that, he could protect the rim. Only thing with Ayton is, you know, he's shown a tendency to get outworked sometimes. And when he's not getting his touches in the paint, you know, he loses interest.
Mm-hmm.
That's been the big question mark with him. But I buy that because of the fact that when I look at what this team is trying to do and keep Dame happy in the effort to compete, yeah, like I buy it. Plus, even if they do trade Damian Lillard and Dame say I want out, he can serve as either a win now piece or a rebuild. And when I say he can serve, I'm talking about DeAndre Ayton, of course, because he's under contract for the next 3 years, and it's plenty of room for him to grow as a player. And his offensive role is not going to increase as a third option behind KD and Devin Booker in Phoenix. So a move to a team such as Portland, that could be in the best overall interest of his career and give him a space in which he can flourish just further west of the desert.
Yep, that makes a ton of sense. And like we mentioned, it could be the saving grace for his career. It really can. Damian Lillard's going to push him. If he stays, Dame Dollar's going to push him. Chauncey's going to push him. And those are the right people you can have to help you advance your career. We talk about winning culture, so that works, man.
Oh, for sure. But with that said, that concludes this week's edition of Open Run, presented to you by War Media. Make sure to check out our Substack page. Check out the latest episode of the At Bat podcast with Saul Rodriguez and Miles Porter, discussing whether or not Jake Berger of the Chicago White Sox is an American League All-Star this season, and much more across the world of Major League Baseball. For myself, Gabriel Wilkins, my man Josh Hicks, so long, everybody.